welcome to KnightHunter Books. This is the second part of our May wrap-up, which just went on a bit long, so we split it into two videos. See a link below for the first half.
I read a few things after the readathon, first of which I'm going to talk about at least was SEAL Team 666 by Weston Ochse, which you might remember from our bookshop crawl haul was given away by Forbidden Planet for free. I do not feel in any way ripped off. It does feel a little like somebody was commissioned to write a book that hit a particular number of boxes. I mean, it says on the cover, like the X-Files written by Tom Clancy. And yeah, you've got supernatural threats. You can feel much less guilty about killing off supernatural threats. You don't have to think about, you know, geopolitics and whether America is right to do this. And you've got the sort of Clancy-esque endless rundown of exactly what weapons they're carrying and in what configuration and how everything works, which...
But you did finish it.
I did. A little like reading a boring AAA video game. So, I mean, I can imagine a variant of Call of Duty being very like this. Something like that. So, big muscular men
doing man things.
Keeping the world safe. When I say big manly men, I do mean mostly big white men. The non-Caucasian members of the team, it's noted, both entered the Navy as an alternative to going to prison. The one Hispanic member of the team is described as having a voice that sounded like a traditional southern drawl, but a face that made you wonder if he was here in the country legally. I was like, no, actually, you wouldn't, you know, there are plenty of Hispanic members of US society. So, yeah, politics, not its strong suit in any way, shape or form. And the body count among non-European descended Americans is also notably higher. So, not a series I'll be carrying on with.
Or recommending. But, you know, killed an hour and a half or so. My next one is Survivor's Club. This has quite a fun premise. It's what happened if all the horror movies of the 80s were true. And you end up with this list of people that all meet up and they all experienced horrible, traumatic events in, I think, the early 70s. Oh, so kind of like Sean Maguire's Every Heart a Doorway.
Yes, which I think was why I was intrigued. In retrospect, it should have occurred to me that I've read and enjoyed lots and lots of Mortal Fantasies. Horror movies, however, not so much. So, whilst I could appreciate this was well done and all the foreshadowing and relationship between the team members, in retrospect, the tone was not really ever going to work for me. That's not the book, that's me being bad at buying books. I think we'd been wandering around somewhere all day and we'd found a cute comic shop and I wanted to support them and this looked kind of fun. And it is, just not my thing.
This month, I also read 4 graphic novels, 3 of which were rereads. So this is the Rat Queen series. 4th one's High Fantasies, and that was the one I really wanted to read, and then I read the first few pages and went, I don't remember what's going on. So binged the rest of them in a single day. It was great. So these graphic novels are about a troupe of female fantasy characters, very tropey, but it knows what it's doing, going on adventures, kind of campaigns, D&D style, and it just twists everything, and the characters are amazing, and it is a lot of fun. I actually really enjoyed rereading these after playing D&D, in that when I read them the first time I hadn't really played it before, so I think even if you're not that familiar with the tropes it's playing on, these are still fun, or I found them fun, but I was noticing so many more things afterwards.
Did any of your players only pack drugs and candy as trail rations?
No, but I might have to create a character just to do that. I just want to play as all of these characters. They're just all really different, but they all work together and they've become friends, and it's lovely. Having reread them, I would say that the first one is probably still my favourite. Definitely had me laughing out loud more than the rest. And it's just kind of fun meeting the characters for the first time. I think the third might be my least favourite, but the second and fourth are both really good. The bar is still high. Definitely recommend this series. Really excited about the next one, although I hope it comes out soon so that I don't have to reread them all again, although it wouldn't be the worst thing.
My next one is A Spoonful of Magic by Irene Radford, which I knew nothing about picking up. It just had a very eye-catching cover. And this is very much a book of two parts. In part about a single soccer mom bringing up her 3 kids, all of whom are developing magic in their own unique ways, in a world where magic is mostly supposed to be secret, but in some areas it's kind of generally acknowledged. She has her own domestic magic. She's a baker, she can transform things. Her son is a dancer, her daughter's a hacker who develops the ability to bewitch people, which she finds really disconcerting. And that bit was delightful. Honestly, it was light and fluffy and just really good fun. I'd quite happily read another volume of that. I'm not entirely sure what that says about me, but hey. However, it does feel like some alpha readers went, no, it's urban fantasy, there's got to be crime in there, and sex. And poor writer went away and sort of crowbarred both in. So the single mom has an ex-husband who is the traditional magical law enforcement type, who has a really disturbing relationship with his ex-wife. It's possible there was some magical coercion involved, which is deeply squicky. When I say it felt like the sex was crowbarred in, apparently working big ritual magic makes you horny. For no particular reason.
And I think from what you said earlier, only adults, not, 16-year-old boys.
Yeah, no, they're too young and feeble, they just fall asleep.
Innocent, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm not sure I'll be following along with this. I'd be intrigued to pick up more by the author, but possibly ones without the kind of sort of crimey elements. It's almost like picking random books up by the cover. You see, if I judge that by the cover. And, supernatural soccer mom.
After the readathon, the other book I read this month, while travelling around the country on trains and not wanting to lug 1Q84 around, was I Am Legend by Richard Matheson, which was, pretty good. It was written in the 50s, so actually I probably liked it more than I expected, given that. And it is a bit of a classic of lots of genres, because it's got definitely a horror feel to it. There are supernatural creatures, but the way the main character approaches them is much more of a scientific approach, so it can kind of fall into lots of different genres.
He doesn't go away and check ancient law books.
No, one of my favourite bits is where he goes to the library and gets out all the books on, microbes and bacteria, and then goes and steals a nice microscope and all sorts of things. So I really enjoyed that kind of thing.
Back when you could get to the cutting edge of science in a couple of months by reading.
Yeah, that's all you need.
In the 50s, maybe.
Follows this one guy in an apocalypse type situation. So he's lonely, spends a lot of time with himself, and it might have done a good job at kind of capturing the different kind of phases he went through, like the loss of hope and then the kind of motivation when he discovered something new. So it was probably a good character study. The reason I keep saying probably is that I didn't really find it that interesting. I think if I'm going to read a book about one person, a real deep dive into their mind, I'd rather it wasn't an American white guy. He just seemed like quite a generic character to me. But, it was the 50s.
Had you been reading in the 50s, it probably would have been really original and different.
Yeah, but it had a good plot, it had some nice kind of reflective, philosophical notes at the end, satisfying ending, it was a good length, So, generally, I quite liked it. It just wasn't quite kind of wow.
From what you were saying, he was a bit creepy in places.
He was a bit creepy, yeah. That might be realistic of a guy left by himself for a long time. He does think about women, but I found it difficult to kind of connect with that. When he's fantasising about kind of disease victims outside of his door, I get that he's lonely, but don't get it.
My next one is The End of the Day by Claire North. This follows the adventures of the Harbinger of Death. Death has moved with the times. We stopped paying attention to eagles. He now sends a guy called Charlie, who went to the University of Birmingham. Sometimes he comes as a courtesy, sometimes he comes as a warning. This is a very angry book. Reminds me of...
Book of Phoenix?
Yeah, Book of Phoenix, or even Nomon, because Charlie doesn't just go to the deaths of people. He also visits ideas. For instance, social housing in central London, and a glacier in Greenland. Yeah, this is quite intense in places, and it's very much watching both through the eyes and watching this one person dealing with a really intense exposure to the bits of the world that are changing, but he never gets to see what comes after. He's there for the close of things, as things wind down. He visits the last woman in Peru to speak her language.
So is it like a series of short stories, or is it tied together?
It's really stylistically odd. So you do follow him on various sort of visits to go and see people, but it starts sort of partway through his career, and then later on, after events have been referred to, then you'll get to hear about events earlier on in his career. There are also intervening chapters. Charlie loves people. He loves the living. That's what his job is all about. And so he listens wherever he goes. So you get these odd chapters, which are like nothing I've seen anywhere else, which are just dialogue, where Charlie's trying to follow 5 different conversations on the bus, which very much ground you in wherever he's visiting at that point in time, and to some extent give you a sort of timeline through, particularly if you're English, you'll pick up on some of the politics about when this story's happening. Really very good. I like this. It's a very Claire Northy book. I'm not sure I would necessarily recommend this as the first Claire North book to read. If you read any of the others and like them, read this one next. My next one is Autonomous by Annalee Newitz. This is her debut book as a novelist. She's a technology writer covering the biotech beat, which does come through very much in the book. It's set in a relatively near future. AI is a thing.
It is now.
Okay, sorry.
Better AI.
Yeah, autonomous robots are a thing, and they have caused interesting shifts in society, because the rule is that after 10 years of service, the manufacturer has to set them free. So they are effectively sort of indentured labourers, paying off the debt created by their construction. However, that also means that kind of revives the idea of indentured labour, and can fit an autonomy chip to a robot once it's earned its way out. Humans that have been bred for indenture, it's much harder to reprogram them later on. This was a really fun thriller set in a terrifyingly plausible future, which I would put in a similar sort of boat to Malka Older's Infamocracy. Feels quite similar stylistically. It's got some nice bi-representation. The main protagonist has a male lover during one flashback and a female lover during another flashback, and it's never referred to. It's not a thing. She just happens to be bi, which is quite nice. I will certainly pick up the next book by this author.
Okay, so those are John's 7 books.
And I'm halfway through another one.
You're doing well, you're doing well. Let us know if you have any thoughts on any of these. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again soon.